porch light flickered twice before holding steady. It was the only light on the block that night. One weak bulb fighting the dark, casting long shadows across a quiet residential street. No traffic, no voices, just the sound of insects and the low rustle of leaves moving in the wind. You're watching Cold Case Secrets. If you care about the truth behind cold cases like this, subscribe now, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. The clue that breaks this case comes later, and it changes everything. At 9:47 p.m., a man walked past that porch. He didn't run. He didn't hurry. He didn't look back. To anyone watching, he would have looked like a neighbor heading home after a long day. But that moment, that single walk down an empty street, was the last time this town existed the way it always had. Because the man who passed beneath that porch light wasn't just someone going home. He was someone who had already decided what would happen next. You're watching Cold Case Secrets. Stick around, because the truth in this story comes from a clue nobody expected. Subscribe, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. This town sat miles from the nearest highway, surrounded by trees, farmland, and narrow two-lane roads that locals knew by heart. People didn't end up here by accident. You either grew up here, married into it, or chose it because you wanted quiet. Crime was something that happened somewhere else. Doors stayed unlocked. Cars sat idling outside stores while drivers ran in for just a minute. Parents didn't panic if their kids were late, because everyone knew everyone. And when danger feels impossible, vigilance disappears. That's what made this town perfect. He had lived there long enough that no one remembered him arriving. He showed up at community events without being asked, helped stack chairs, cleaned up trash, volunteered for emergency response when storms knocked out power. He wasn't charismatic. He didn't tell stories or dominate conversations. He listened, he nodded, he remembered details about people's lives and brought them up later, just enough to seem thoughtful. If you asked anyone to describe him, the answer sounded almost identical. He's just normal. Quiet guy. Reliable. Those descriptions mattered, because when someone fits too perfectly into background, they stop being examined at all. The day began like any other. She went to work. I talked to co-workers, made plans for later in the week. There were no signs of fear, no indication that anything unusual was on her mind. That evening, she stopped by the local grocery store. Security footage showed her entering calmly, picking up a few items and waiting in line. The timestamp on the register recorded the purchase at 8:57 p.m. She paid, thanked the clerk, and walked out. Behind her, a man followed, not close enough to raise suspicion, not far enough to lose sight of her. What investigators would learn years later was that this wasn't a chance encounter. It was a final move in something that had been building quietly, unnoticed, for far longer than anyone imagined. The road where a car was found was familiar to locals. It curved gently through trees, followed a shallow creek, and connected two well-traveled areas. People used it daily without a second thought. Her car sat neatly on the shoulder. Engine off, lights off, no damage. Inside were her purse, her phone, and the grocery bag. Nothing appeared stolen. At first glance, it didn't look like a crime scene, and that assumption delayed everything. Police initially believed she may have pulled over willingly. A mechanical issue, a medical emergency. Someone she knew offered help. That theory bought the perpetrator time. By the time officers recognized this was involuntary, the scene had already been compromised by weather, passing vehicles, and well-meaning bystanders. Footprints near the creek were partially erased. Tire impressions faded. What remained was uncertainty. Stay with us, because what happens next is the moment investigators realized the killer wasn't an outsider, he was hiding in plain sight. When the call for volunteers went out, dozens of people responded. They brought flashlights, gloves, and water bottles, and he arrived early. He offered to help organize groups, asked which areas had already been covered, suggested routes that made sense. He spoke calmly, confidently. People listened. Someone asked why the area near the creek wasn't being searched yet. He answered without hesitation. Too unstable. We don't want anyone getting hurt. No one questioned it. What no one realized at the time was that he wasn't avoiding danger. He was protecting a secret. For days later, a hunter noticed something out of place, something that didn't belong in the natural pattern of the woods. It was hidden just far enough off the path that you wouldn't see it unless you knew where to look or unless you were trained to notice when something felt wrong. The call came in quietly. No sirens, no announcement, but the news traveled fast. The town gathered in silence, trying to process what had happened. And he stood among them, head bowed, hands clasped. He didn't cry. He didn't need to. The medical examiner worked carefully. Time and exposure had taken their toll, but certain truths were undeniable. There were signs of restraint, defensive injuries, evidence of a struggle. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. But without witnesses or clear forensic leads, responsibility remained unclear. Under pressure, investigators did what many departments do. They looked outward. Anyone new in town, anyone passing through, anyone who didn't fit. Meanwhile, the person who knew the area best, the person who had helped guide the search, was never seriously considered. Why would he be? He was one of them. Weeks turned into months, months into years. Detectives rotated out. Files were moved to storage. Evidence was boxed and labeled. The case wasn't forgotten, but it lost urgency. And urgency is what keeps answers alive. For the family, the pain stayed sharp. For the town, the fear dulled into something quieter, an unease that never fully went away. For him, time was covered. Behind closed doors, he wasn't the person people thought they knew. He kept notebooks, not emotional diaries, logs, dates, locations, observations. He followed news coverage closely, not out of concern or out of interest. He wanted to know what investigators knew. And when the attention faded, he adjusted his routines. Carefully, for years, the town believed the danger had passed. What they didn't realize was that the danger had simply learned how to wait. Decades later, a cold case review brought the file back into the light. A newer investigator noticed something overlooked, a hair sample. At the time it was collected, technology couldn't do much with it. Now it could. The lab extracted a partial profile. Not enough for a direct match. Enough for a familial one. When the result came back, it didn't point to a criminal record. It pointed to someone respected, someone known, someone who had been there from the beginning. Investigators stared at the report. They ran it again. Same result. The implication was clear and deeply unsettling. The killer hadn't avoided the investigation. He had participated in it. Police didn't confront him immediately. They observed. They noted patterns, routes he avoided, dates he seemed tense, questions he answered before they were asked. The mask was slipping. In the interrogation room, he appeared calm until detectives mentioned the hair sample, until they mentioned the creek. His posture changed. His breathing shifted. And when they said, "We know you were there," he didn't deny it. He smiled. Search warrants uncovered notebooks, pages of dates and movements, not memories, records. They matched timeline from unsolved incidents. The double life was no longer a theory. It was documented. Because of modern DNA testing, investigators finally identified the person responsible. That truth proved the killer had lived openly among the people he terrified. It rewrote the entire story. This is why these cases matter. If you want more stories where buried evidence finally speaks, subscribe to Cold Case Secrets and check the playlist below. The trial was quiet. No spectacle, just evidence. The jury returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty. The town changed. Doors locked. Trust eroded. But the family finally had answers. Because of a single tested piece of evidence, investigators finally uncovered the truth. That truth exposed a hidden double life, delivered long-delayed justice, and changed how this story will be remembered forever. After years of silence, the truth surfaced, and the story was no longer the one everyone thought they knew. Thanks for watching Cold Case Secrets. Subscribe for more cases. Every file has a secret.